Hi, my name's Paul Barnett and I'm one of the members here at the Royal Yacht Club, and I'm lucky to be here today with Stuart Murdoch, who's multiple Kestrel national champion, and we're going to go through the Kestrel dinghy and all the features and benefits of it. So over to you, Stuart, if you can tell us a bit about how did you get into Kestrels and tell us all about the boat.
Yeah, so we're here this morning to talk a bit about the Kestrel dinghy. It's been around a long time. It was the first glass fibre boat designed for glass fibre production by Ian Proctor, and it is a boat that has been modernised. In 2000, Ian Morrison redesigned the deck layout completely, so it's a new deck layout on a conventional hull. The weight of the boat's the same as the original boat. They raced the Mark 1, the Mark 2, and the Kestrel 2000, which is effectively a Mark 3. They race them on scratch together, and there are older boats that have been stiffened up and perform extraordinarily well. They're a real threat to the new boats. So let me just talk you through the boat. The boat was designed as a 2 or 3 person boat, and to this day it can still be sailed by a helm and crew, or a helm and crew and a third party.
So why did the Royal Yacht Club choose the Kestrel?
We looked at a lot of boats, and there were people in the club that were sailing higher performance boats, boats like Fireballs and 4000s, and I sailed at International Contender for many years. And there are people that were sailing lower performance boats. The one thing about this river, it's a tidal estuary, it can kick up a big swell, and we wanted a boat that was highly seaworthy. They could go directly downwind, unlike asymmetrics, and that had a performance that could be raced or cruised and was very adaptable to different weights of crew. And we ended up having tested a range of boats, saying this was the best boat for the river, and it still is today. One of the main attractions of this boat is the depth of the hull. It's got a very deep, comfortable sitting position, and I have to say that of all the boats I've sailed, there are very few that are more comfortable and better ergonomically designed than the Kestrel.
It still hurts though.
Only if you really, really work hard. But it's a very comfortable boat to sail. You've got to remember to keep your weight forward in the Kestrel. It's a lot of buoyancy forward, so we sail right up by the thwart. You've got all your control lines, like most modern boats, all the control lines are led back. So it's very easy to control the rig, to depower the rig, to power it up. And unlike a lot of other boats, it still retains an alloy centre plate. And the centre plate is a very fine centre plate. It helps with making the boat a very high pointing boat, actually. And it has an advantage in a river like this. If you happen to touch the pebbles, you're not going to damage your foil. So it will knock up and it won't be damaged.
So Stuart, there's quite a lot of ropes in here. It looks a bit daunting, and particularly for people who don't know what they all are. Can you explain just a wee bit about them?
Well, the simple thing is you've got your main sheet. We have a stern bridle. It's led along to centre sheeting, so it's actually bridle to bring the sail right into the centre line when you're going towards the wind, but it's actually a centre sheeted boat. We've retained the hoop, which is actually great for giving you an extra stability. I actually use it when I'm roll tacking. I pull the boat over when I'm tacking the boat. So the basic controls are main sheet, jib sheet. Simple, like most other boats. What we've got inside the boat is splayed control lines. So the set of control lines I use are the mainsail outhaul, which is led down and splayed to both sides. The Cunningham eye, which is for flattening the sail, and that's again led back and splayed from both sides. The most important one, and that's why it's red, if you have to grab it in a hurry, is the kicking strap. So that's the kicking strap that controls the amount of leech tension on the sail. And lastly, I've got adjustable forestay through the jib tension, so I can actually pull the mast forward or let the mast back slightly. And I wouldn't normally adjust that when sailing unless there was a significant change in the wind strength. So just picking up the mast controls, which are up front. You've got basically the strut. Some boats still have a ram fitted here. This boat's got a strut, and the strength of the strut is all down below to stop the boat bending when the compression on the strut comes on. So you have a structure down here which stiffens the foredeck and it allows you to take the pressure of the mast. So you can, by pulling the strut on, you're effectively stiffening the mast. So that's a stiffener of the mast, and that's working against the kicking strap to give you control of the mast shape. In lighter weather, some people like to put a bit of pre-bend in, and that allows you to pull the mast forward in terms of the strut, to put pre-bend into the mast as well.
Stuart, can you tell us about the amount of buoyancy in the boat? How safe is it if it capsizes?
Well, certainly a very safe boat, and for 2 or 3 reasons. If a boat capsizes and inverts, and it's a very shallow boat, there's a real risk of entrapment. With this boat, if it ever inverts, there's a huge airspace underneath the boat, which is very attractive. The one thing that I always tell people who are coming to the class to do is make sure you cleat your centreboard so that it doesn't fall back into the case, because there's nothing worse than being on the underside of a boat when it's on its side and not being able to bring it back upright. The basic tanks, 2 side tanks, which are separate from a shallower fore tank. I think some people might say the boat has too much buoyancy, because in any breeze at all, for an inexperienced crew, it can invert quite quickly, and that's why having this airspace underneath the boat is very reassuring. Once it does come up, it comes up very dry because it's got a lot of buoyancy. So when it comes up, there's very little water in the boat, and we've got transom flaps, which, to be honest, I've never used, and I have capsized. So these transom flaps unclick, and you basically sail the water out the boat. By opening the transom flaps, the water would be released from the back of the boat. And the other feature inside the boat, which is used regularly, is the self-bailers. So the self-bailers, if you're sailing on a chop, would allow any water coming over the foredeck to be swept and sucked back by the venturi action of the self-bailers. There are lots of reasons why Royalty opted for this boat, but one of them was it's a boat that performs really well in light wind. It's got a very easily driven hull. It tacks like a rocket, so tactically boats are roll tacking together up ashore and getting very close company. Arguably it's over canvassed. It's got a lot of sail for the size of boat, but the boat's modern rig allows you to depower it. So it's a boat which is capable of going extremely well in light weather and also being sailed in really rough and strong conditions.
You know, you talked about depowering the boat. How easy is that to do?
Well, it's all controlled from here. So the first thing you would do for depowering is you would let the mast bend off a bit. So you let the mast bend off a little, and you also, as you let the mast at the front, the strut off, you'd also pull on a bit more kicking strap. I would also, in strong winds, let my jib cars off slightly. So these are the controls for the jib, and by letting that off, it slides back and it opens a slot between the jib and the main, and it allows the airflow to continue. With a lot of kicking strap, belting the kicking strap right in, you're sheeting the main into the quarter. You're no longer bringing it right into the centre of the boat. So the boat, the top of the sail is folding off, it's depowered, and the boat will point up, and you can also lift the centre plate slightly, so you get slightly less lateral resistance, and it's not going to affect your pointing in a strong wind, but your forward speed will be improved and increased.
Stuart, you said that the Kestrel had a symmetrical spinnaker. Can you just explain, is it easy to get up and down?
It is. A symmetrical spinnaker is distinguished from an asymmetric spinnaker. An asymmetric spinnaker is like a huge foresail that's pulled round from one side to the other and is generally sailed from a strut or pole that comes out the front of the boat. The symmetrical spinnaker is, as it says, it's symmetrical. It's a kind of, not balloon shape, but it rotates either side of the boat. Arguably it's slightly more complicated to set, but the boat can go directly downwind or even by the lee, which is fantastic in a tidal estuary like this, which is why we've got it. In terms of setting it, it's hoisted by the helmsperson. So it's hoisted here, that's the cleat for hoisting it, and it's pulled down by a downhaul line. And the sail itself is stowed in a sock, which goes right the way back inside the boat, and it's launched from this tube at the front of the boat. So the sail comes out of this tube here when it's pulled up. So as the helmsman is pulling the sail up, the crew is taking the windward rope, the guy, and attaching it to the pole, and then shoving the pole out. And of course the height of the pole needs to be adjusted, and this gives you the adjustment of the height of the pole. And for dropping the sail, it's the reverse. So as the sail is to be dropped, I always take it off here first of all, and the crew will hold it. The crew will hold the sail and guide it into the tube as I pull it down. So it's not dropped over the front. If you drop it over the front, it's quite easy to sail over it. And I stow the pole back down parallel with the main boom.
Well, thank you very much, Stuart, for showing us the boat. If anybody's interested in learning a bit more, what do they do?
I suppose the best thing is Kestrel .org.uk, kestrel.org.uk, and that will be on the bottom of the screen at the end for people to pick up.
And on that website, is there phone numbers people can have a phone up and chat?
There should be,
members.
And there are key clubs. I mean, 2 key clubs would be our fleet here at Royalty in Scotland, and Mail & Sea, which is down in the Blackwater. And they're big fleets, but there's Kestrels, older Kestrels and Kestrels peppered throughout the UK and internationally. And I think you'll find, if you're interested in the boat, people will be very happy to give a trial sail or to talk about it and to show its merits. It's a great piece of kit.
Great. Good. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for doing it. Thanks.
Great.
Cheers.
Okay. Stuart, there seems to be quite a lot of ropes here, which could be a bit daunting for some people.
There's also quite a lot of wind here right now as well.
The points on the Kestrel class, good and bad. No, I shouldn't have said that.
Back. Just scrub that, would you? It's a load of shite. 15 years now, and having sailed the